All right, hello everybody. We somehow start with Turkish, but we will continue in English since the summer school, the language of the summer school will be in English. So let me start by introducing myself. Once I figure this out, okay, I think I'm good to go. So, hello again, this is Recep Yorulmaz. If those who don't know about me, I'm the director of economic studies at ORSAM. At the same time, I'm working as an assistant professor at the Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University. I'm doing economic research and I'm just managing the economy department at ORSAM. As you follow up our works, our studies, we try our best to analyze the real issues, the current issues of the MENA region, the whole region actually. I will explain the MENA region a bit. I think most of you are grad students. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to start with the beginning, the basic structures of the MENA economy in the first place. Then at the end of this lecture, the aim of this course actually, just analyzing and showing you the rationale behind the current issues and current struggles actually in the MENA region in terms of the economy perspectives. So at the end of this class, you will be able to understand why the struggles, for example, in the Eastern Mediterranean, the struggles in Lebanon, in Iran, in Iraq. So we will try to show you the economic rationales behind these struggles. So before we begin, we actually start with digging the kind of basic economic structures of these countries. Who are these countries in the first place? Also, I have a map behind me. We are dealing with Middle Eastern and North African countries. Most of the focus of our researches are on kind of most famous countries, unfortunately, most famous because of the struggles of those countries like Iraq, Iran, the host countries in the Eastern Mediterranean like Libya, and Syria, Israel, even Egypt, actually, one of the most important ones. So we focus mostly on those kind of countries because of the struggles on those countries, as the most of the others in the world, actually, so other researchers in the world. So while we are digging into the economic structures of those countries, we begin with clustering these countries in different categories, like economic categories, classifications of categories. We can either use those words. We do use such categories in order to analyze the countries correctly, compare the countries correctly, because if you kind of try to analyze the countries, different countries that do not relate to each other in terms of economies, in terms of their population size, in terms of their kind of other specifications like gender-based, like ethnicities and other stuff, you'll be biased. So in order to overcome the bias estimation, in the first place, as an economist, we do classify the countries, specify the countries by specifying the country's specific structures. So World Bank, IMF, all they're doing kind of comparisons, kind of classification. So we begin with the World Bank's classification in terms of their economic structures, like are they oil exporters or oil importers in the first place. Why are we doing this in the first place? It's all about the specification of the specific characteristics of the region. Why? Because in this region, there are high number of natural resources, and most of those countries, lucky ones, have those resources, but the other ones do not have those resources. So it itself actually comes with kind of insufficiencies and inequalities among the region. So these inequalities kind of determines the struggles and the relationship between those countries in the region. So it explains economic. We can easily say that in the MENA region, economic structures explain all the struggles and all the political situations in the region. So that's why the economies of analyzing the economies of Middle Eastern and North African countries are kind of on the hook and kind of important. So let's go back to the table we have. We classified in the first place, the basic classification, oil exporters and oil importers in the region. Of course, oil exporter countries, as you already know, GCC countries itself, because we compare those countries different GDP rates, national income rates in the region, even in the world. So we don't need to classify this separately from the others in order to make, again, I'm saying this because it will help you to make your analysis well. In order to make unbiased estimations and analysis, you need to first diversify the countries correctly, then compare the countries with each other in terms of their different specifications. So oil exporters are GCC countries like Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. So those are the key factors, key countries in the region in terms of economy, in terms of the politics. And also the other oil exporter countries, we have Algeria, Iran, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Yemen. When do we look at those developing oil exporter countries, we can easily say that despite they have the rich natural resources, those countries are on the hook, are in struggles, are in the do have problems actually in their economic situations as well as in political situations because they do not have political stabilities. So we can easily make a simple analysis here. These countries, despite the rate of natural resources, despite the size of natural resources, since they do not have the political stability, since they are in political instability, they have structural problems and political problems. Structural problems means both political problems and economic problems at the same time. So we need to analyze deeply and carefully of those countries, like especially like Iran and Iraq, because of the struggles of these countries. Especially we do make a simple analysis here. Since these countries have easily understand this, since these countries have considerable amount of natural resources, so they do have struggles. So you can make an inferential, like you can ask a question here: why don't those countries in the GCC are not in struggles? Because they already bounded. The answer is actually they already bound to some global powers. Think about Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. So you can understand what I'm saying actually. I'm just differentiate here Qatar, but Qatar playing kind of role in the middle, kind of the balanced structure actually, in terms of they're playing with the balanced policy among the global powers. So it's kind of an economic politics of the region. So we have the other unlucky guys in the region, like oil importers, developing oil importers, mostly Djibouti, like Egypt, the important countries like here, Egypt and Morocco and Lebanon also. We do see those countries, we can maybe differentiate Egypt here, especially Lebanon, are more in struggles. Why? Because of many reasons, of course. We have many analyses about the Lebanon's economic crisis, especially. We do just release a report about the economic crisis in Lebanon. If you are interested in, please, you can read it on our website, which is a good report, deeply analyze the reasons behind the economic crisis in Lebanon. So these countries, these guys are the kind of unlucky guys which do not have enough natural resources. At the same time, they do deal with the political instabilities in the country. When do we see these countries actually? We will explain the reasons behind these struggles, and we will just count on the reasons behind this increase in the next paragraph, in the next slides actually. So another classification of these countries, of the MENA itself, which is important one actually. I will remind you about this table because it's so important. I'll remind you this table many times in our lecture today. Please try to remind, or you can take a screenshot here. Since we are doing an online course, it will be a bit difficult for us to go back and turn back. So please try to remember this table because it's pretty important. It explains many points of the reason of the struggles, of the reasons of the struggles in the region. For example, let me clarify this table first. This table shows which countries are resource poor or resource abundant. At the same time, which countries are labor abundant or labor poor. As you can see, we do have resource poor and labor abundant countries, which are Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Tunisia, Yemen, Morocco, and Palestine. And we have resource poor and labor poor countries, one single country, Israel, and resource abundant and labor abundant countries, which are lucky ones, most lucky ones, must be most lucky ones, Iran, Iraq, and Algeria. And we do have resource abundant and labor poor countries, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Libya. As you can see, resource abundant and labor poor countries mostly are the oil exporter countries in GCC, except Libya. So what kind of analysis we do make, even from this simple table? We can easily see this. Labor abundant countries mostly are also resource poor. So those countries, since they have more labor, which means they have higher population sizes, they have, as we will see in the next slides, they have higher young populations. So they kind of export their excessive amount of population, which are already unemployed in these countries. They kind of export this excessive amount of population to those countries. We can easily say that even from Egypt, especially, the key country here is Egypt, they kind of reshape the Emirates. They kind of, when do we talking about the excessive amount of population, do not just think that those excessive amount of population are all low skilled workers. They have hired high skilled workers to migrate into those countries, into GCC countries. Why? Because those countries have a huge amount of resources, and they got too much money. So in order to make much money, those people actually migrated. The simple migration case, those excessive or the high skilled workers actually tend to migrate into those countries like GCC countries, like they have seek to get more income, more money itself. So this simple case comes with many analyses actually. How? We will see the impact of the COVID-19. Those countries actually impacted, especially both of those countries affected from the negative results of the COVID-19. How? Most of those excessive population worked or working in the services sector. So the services sector affected mostly in the COVID-19. So both of those countries affected. Those countries affected by the shutdown of many institutions, organizations, or companies which work on services sector, and those countries affected by the remittances inflows. The remittance means itself the money comes from the workers of the citizens of the countries who work abroad. So they send, for example, Egyptian citizens, high skilled workers, low skilled workers, it doesn't matter, working in the Emirates or Qatar. So they send a high amount of, most of the time, like the Turkish people in Germany. They send high amount of their salaries to their mainland, to their families. So it calls remittances. And remittances in the MENA region are one of the key factors, economic sources of such specific countries like Egypt and Lebanon and Tunisia in this region, like in the MENA region. For example, in Lebanon's economy depends mostly on financial sector and remittances, and of course the services sector like tourism and other services sectors. But mostly these three indicators, three factors are determining the economic structure of Lebanon. So once with the COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19, turn back and another analysis of the impacts of COVID-19 on Lebanon, also this explains us the reasons behind the economic crisis, the huge economic crisis in the Lebanon. First, the ongoing problems, ongoing struggles in the economy of Lebanon, like political instabilities, even the briberies and other stuff. And the main economic reason behind this, the struggles in services sector and remittances, the current one. So I will remind you this table, as I said, in the next slide. So we will use this to analyze, to explain many situations. I would like to mention one last point here, which is Israel. Israel is at the same time labor poor and resource poor country. But according to the table, we should say Israel is it must be the most unlucky country and should be the poorest country in the region, but it's not. We will explain why this is the case in the next slides. Simply, it's all about the economic diversification of the country. We will come there. So, why those countries, why the MENA region is on the hook, and why the MENA region is so important in the world economy as well as in the world history, especially up to 21st century. You should explain this, the new global economic system in 20th century, which began to depend on cheap and abundant oil policies. What kind of policy is this? You might all know that the production size and the production functions and production styles of the structures of the countries start to mostly focus on and depend on the struggles, the structures and the parts of the oil itself. So with the discovery of oil, of course, those countries behind me, those regions behind me, became more important. But in this case, we should mention this, the land, the source of the natural resources, and is important, but at the same time, the roads, the transportation road, the way of transportation or transportation road are also important. We call this energy security at the same time. I will mention this later maybe. So the new global economic system made simply this region more important for the countries, for the powerful countries in the world, the main powerful countries in the world. So they start to focus more on those countries, and the first victim of this new global system is Ottoman Empire, as you can understand, as you do know actually. So in order to just manage or just control those sources, those resources that are found in the region, the powerful countries, the powers of the main powers of the world actually just divided this region into separate, of course, countries. So they do now actually mostly easily manage the resources and the source of these countries, while actually they are dividing these regions into small pieces. So it made it really easy to kind of manage the sources for the main powers. So you all know this information. Why this also the region is so important? They have the 2/3 of world's oil reserves and half of gas reserves, natural gas reserves in the world. So also those countries, this actually comes with kind of an disadvantage for those countries. Is kind of a disadvantage, actually, a simple disadvantage, because those countries, because of the dependency of natural resources, these countries couldn't manage the economic diversity while they do not have political instability, because, as I said, they were divided into pieces. Despite of their willingness, actually, they just forced to divide into small pieces. Most of them forced to divide or convinced to divide into small pieces. And this comes with some disadvantage like natural resource dependency, and it explains the rentier state economy, the rentier state theory of us. We should explain here, while we are mentioning the basic structures of this region, we should mention the rentier state theory. What was this theory? Simply, this theory is all about dependence of natural resources. It brings kind of laziness, in simple words, and those countries do not produce while they have high amount of money, high amount of capital. They kind of tend to not produce some necessary goods for them, because it would rather, it will be more easy to import them. Since they have more capital, they easily import the necessary goods and services from abroad, or they just let some others, or invite some foreign sources or foreign workers to work for them actually. So it comes with some cost to those countries, just losing the economic diversity and make the people more lazy. And I will explain in terms of tax situation, since I'm also at my working as working on public finance issues, and financial economics is also my kind of topic. I will explain the tax theory behind I will just combine tax theory and public finance theory, maybe you can say, with rentier state theory. So it's kind of, in those countries, it's kind of mostly related to each other. So natural resource dependency also comes with limited capacity to produce various goods, with also diversity in production, which is really important for many countries, for any country actually, even for Turkey. Think about the recent situation in the world right now. We are in the effect of COVID-19 right now. We are living this actually. We are in it right now. Even this course are doing, we are doing this course in online because of the COVID-19. So thinking about the situation in COVID-19 right now, it kind of comes with many effects, right? Like the impact, the main impact on services sector. If your country, if your economy most depend on kind of services sector, just one sector, you lose. But if your country depends on many sectors and you have the diversity in production, you will be okay. Actually, you will just leave the impacts of kind of crisis, kind of shocks or business cycles, but whatever you say, minimum, in a minimum level. But we are facing right now, and we witnessed this, many countries in the MENA region having these shocks on the top because of the problem of diversity in production. You can also say economic diversity. But we also do say here, those countries, despite the problems in economic diversity, despite the problems in economic structures, and despite the problems in political instabilities, most of them, especially GCC countries, are high-income countries. Their national income are above the world average. We will see in the next slides as real numbers. You will face the real numbers then, and you will see the situation there, the real situation within the real numbers. But we should say here that the economic growth not always comes with the real growth, the real growth in the society, actually, real economic development. It does not mean, not always, the economic growth equals to economic development. It's purely different things, actually. I have an example here, which is one of the important development economists, Hirschman. He said actually growth is not a sufficient source alone for economic development, and that country must have the ability to invest. If you do not have enough source of or enough human capital of investment, it does not make any sense actually, even though you do have a growth rates kind of 5% a year, 6% a year. It doesn't make sense for it does not make any sense to your economy. We have kind of examples of this actually. Also, I will mention about the population situation of those countries which are really young. So these countries both have advantages and disadvantages. We'll just discuss this later. So the overall import rates of those countries are 35%. They mostly import industrial products, kind of highly industrial products, as we can imagine, since the production capacities are low, the diversity of production are low. So the import goods, in terms of base structures, the import goods like virgin gold, processed petroleum products, automobiles, telecommunication technologies, aircraft supplies, and most important countries, of course, start with China, USA, Germany, and India. And also the export routes are also important here because of the natural resource availability. They kind of mostly export these resources to the East Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, like in the first place China and India and other countries in South Asia. So it's also another topic of discussion and analysis. We should analyze this in the section of if we have time, we can discuss this maybe in other lectures. We do discuss this. The trade war between US and China. Even in this trade war, actually, MENA region is the key factor, the key determinant, because the USA trying to target China using the sources they depend on. China, just think about China's production style and the kind of model they have. since they have aggressive economic growth model, so in order to sustain, in order to achieve this goal, they need natural resources, and their best source, the main source of these natural resources are MENA region actually. So that's why United States, especially thinking about the issues in Iran, the sanctions on Iran, so they're playing their game on the MENA region actually. So this is another disadvantage of these countries. So it comes with a curse, kind of a curse actually, black curse of these countries in the region. But of course, this curse is more severe in countries of resource poor, in resource poor countries like GCC countries, which are resource abundant already. Of course, they do face such impacts of this curse, but the others, at the same time, since they do not have enough resource, they also must deal with the problems comes from the natural resource availability in the region, even though they don't have any sort in their countries. So this is the kind of destiny actually. Those are the unlucky, most unlucky guys in the world, countries in the world, I guess. So let's keep going on the slides. So those countries, as I said, most of those countries are high national income countries, and they are in the developed countries category. It's kind of controversial. Okay, they are in the developed countries category, but what about their economic development levels? What about the inequalities in the region, inequalities among the countries? So when we do deeply analyze, deeply look at the rates of inequalities, we do not have sufficient amount, we do not have feasible picture in those countries, because especially inequality, economic inequality rates are really high among, even in the GCC region. Think about Saudi Arabia, actually. Okay, they are having much income from natural sources, but they are having problems by kind of dividing this wealth into, or sharing this wealth with their society. So it's one of the major problems of those countries. So these developed countries are largely foreign dependent in terms of many things like information and technology. So it comes with many problems as well. What kind of problems? They have to, they do not have to do this, but they kind of import many information technology and high-tech technology from outside, and at the same time they do not manage to educate their own young population, especially countries like Emirates and Saudi Arabia trying to do this actually, and somehow they achieve many things, but we should remind ourselves that, or we should point it out that those countries have low levels of their own citizens, and their population rates are low. So it reminds us, also it shows us how the population rate, high population rate, is important for any country, just in brackets. And while keep going on the issue, since those countries have do not sufficient population, young population, and also do not have sufficient education system, they cannot reflect this technology development into their society. So in terms of sustainability issue, they are struggling. They have problems. What kind of problems? Because they do not reflect these technologies transfer into their society, into their young population. Somehow they are trying to do this in some specific countries, but most of the time, because of the reason of low rate of young population, and because of the reason of bad management, we can say. So we just come here the public finance theory a bit. If countries can finance their public spendings, their public expenditures with non-tax revenues like natural resources, revenues from natural resources, these countries rarely apply taxes. In the public finance theory or taxation theory, like Musgrave's theory, countries, with the increase of countries' national income, tax revenues tend to increase. But those countries are the exceptions of these theories. What kind of exceptions? It's also about the rentier state theory at the same time. They are all about the rentier state theory. In the first place, we should explain this. As a person or as a country, it doesn't matter. You have a budget. And in your budget, you have public revenues or public expenditures or revenues. Let's say you have public revenues and public expenditures. Most of the time, public expenditures are high. So in order to finance these public expenditures, you have high number of public expenditures. Countries tend to use some sources. The main sources from the beginning of the human history, the main sources were taxes, right? But those countries, since they already have enough resource, enough source or enough capital to finance their expenses, they do not tend to seek for more taxes in the system. But it comes with some. This comes with some kind of costs for them. One of the costs of this situation is the lack of boundary of the people to the governments, actually. There was a saying, if I remember, willingness to pay taxes in society determines the validity of the state. If the society in a country, if the society willingness to pay or willingly pay the taxes to the government, they kind of show their prosperity. They kind of share the same, we can easily say, they share the same deeds, actually, the same goods at the same time. But the vice versa, the opposite case, if the society do not willing to pay taxes to the government, we should say they kind of having problems to kind of become a member of the state, actually. So it comes with another cost like dictatorships, like monarchies, and as we see actually right now in the real case, in the practice, it comes with that kind of cost like monarchy and dictatorship also. So let's turn back the rentier state theory again. It depends on rentier state theory, mainly depends on the oil rents, actually. Since oil is a kind of strategic commodity, and natural gas also, it sold and sell and buy kind of contract with long-term contracts or middle term. So oil, we do actually call this oil rents of the revenues of those countries. Then do we look at the real numbers, actually, those countries kind of tend to have high rates in the early years like 2000 and 2015, as we can see from the graph. In 2016, most of all of the countries actually faced with some decreases in the rates of oil rents. And you can also see this as oil revenues, actually. Not similar things, but they are pretty correlated to each other. And again, we do see an increase in 2017 in the rates of oil rents. The decrease, the reason of this decrease, so we do get these kind of data and we do make our analysis in terms of is there any business cycle here or something else. So do we make a simple analysis here? After 2015, it was 2014 actually. So it affected the rates of oil rents, maybe 2 years later. The price oil price shocks affected these rents. So another important factor we can just drag from this table, this graph, is the high number of dependency of oil rents. Actually, as you can see, it's just percentage. As you can see, as this is a percentage, countries like Iraq, Kuwait, Libya are mostly dependent on oil rents in terms of their GDPs. So another good graph we have of this explaining the basic structures of the MENA countries in terms of their economic composition. We can easily see here the blue one, government revenues, the red ones, oil revenues, and the green ones, the other revenues. As you can see here, which countries are in bad position, which countries in good position in terms of economic diversity. Again, Kuwait, Algeria, Oman, Libya, it was way much higher in the times of maybe 5 years ago with the Gaddafi era in Libya, and even Qatar and Saudi Arabia facing same struggles actually, which is dependency of oil rents. So which also explains us the rentier state theory. In terms of the annual economic growth, we can easily see here, these blue ones are MENA region, the whole MENA region. The red ones are MENA oil importance. Green ones are GCC countries. Purple is non-GCC oil exporters. And just say turquoise is North Africa, the whole North Africa. We can easily see here. Also, we have projections here, but I will just mention something here at the end. You can easily see in terms of the projections, actually, non-GCC oil exporters tend to see lower rates of economic growth, but they will tend to get back their levels in 2020. But this data just collected before the COVID-19. So I will explain the impacts of COVID-19 in the later slides, and you will easily see the difference between the expectations or projections before COVID and what happened after COVID. So before COVID, those countries are expected to, especially non-GCC oil exporters, expected to decrease in their economic growth, annual economic growth, because of the struggles on those countries. Remember, non-GCC oil exporters, Iran, Iraq, the impact of US sanctions and the interventions of US army or US politics into the Iraq or explains the situation of this decrease. Again, as I said before, the economic structures, the economic relations, the economic issues in the region explains the political issues, or they're kind of bilateral actually, that two-way causality, we can say in economics, in econometrics, we do say this two-way causality among these issues, like economy and politics in the region. Normally, what we are told actually, economy and politics are different things, and you do not have to follow the politics while you're doing economic policies. But in MENA, right now, unfortunately, we have to say this, economic policies are being made with politics. But right now, you have to say this, it is the case for the whole region, actually, the whole world. So even after the Trump administration's aggressive foreign policy, we do see this against any countries like China, like Iran, like even Turkey. We do see what happened actually after the Trump's tweets. So the impact, we already witnessed the impact of these tweets into the countries or interventions, the impact of these interventions on the country's economies itself. We faced this actually, we witnessed this. I think we are just running time. It's already 15. I can't imagine how we make this much time. I'm trying to summarize some of the parts actually. Let's see the size of the economies itself. Let's look at the MENA's share in the world economy, the whole world economy here is kind of less than 5% in the whole economy in the world. So among the MENA region, actually, the highest percentages of countries, the countries that higher percentages in terms of share in the world, share in the world's GDP are as expected actually. Saudi Arabia here, Saudi Arabia here, and Arab Emirates and Israel, and also Iran actually. We can also count Egypt. I'm not counting Turkey actually as in the MENA region right now, but Turkey is one of the highest share in world GDP in terms of the MENA region actually, in the MENA region, we can easily say. So when we evaluate this economic size, we already explained actually many information over there. Despite their geographical area, population size, and natural sources they have, they got low rate of share in GDP or world's whole GDP actually. So it's kind of an important issue that must be analyzed by economists actually. So another table we have here shows the size of economy, at the same time the relative welfare of citizens. We now have classifications of each country. We will see the comparison of the countries among the MENA. We do say the relative welfare, we do see actually here, in terms of the relative welfare of the citizens, countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Bahrain are the wealthiest countries, just in terms of the per capita GDP. But again, the per capita GDP does not hold for income inequalities. It's kind of an average. As a government, as an economy, you have the total number of wealth, national income, and you have a population size. You just divide this wealth into your population size. You have an average rate of GDP per person, but it does not show the equality among the society. So again, be cautious, or be careful here while reading these numbers. You cannot just say, oh, the United Arab Emirates is the wealthiest country and the people live there, all the wealthiest people in the world. You cannot say that actually, it's just average. Of course, you do say those countries might be the wealthiest people in the world, but you do say not all of them. So in terms of equality means if even just one person living under the poverty levels, it doesn't matter how many people live above the poverty level. So it's against equality. So why do we have, again, we maybe compare the situation with the EU countries. The EU countries per capita rate is kind of $35,000. Is higher than the average of MENA, way higher than the average of MENA. Again, this shows, of course, some countries like GCC countries, like the countries in the GCC having high rates of income, but others like Algeria, like Egypt, like Morocco, even Yemen actually. So we do have to mention Yemen here. While they have sharing the highest wealth in the region, just think about this, think about the share, the wealth in the region itself. Let's say the Emirates get 50% of the share, the Yemen get only 0.5% of the share. So the inequality among the region is another case to be analyzed, must be analyzed actually. How? It also shows the prosperity among the region and also the relations among the region. We do see this the poor countries are not even related to the rich countries. Actually, rich countries just run their relations with the main powers in the world. Kind of, it's one-way relationship, but it's another topic anyway. It's not bilateral relationship. Also, I already mentioned about Iraq and Iran. Since we are running out of time, labor force participation is also another key factor that those countries tend to actually have lower rates in the actually just in comparison to the other regions in the world like EU. They also performing bad performance here in terms of unemployment rates and in terms of the labor force participation. So what's the labor force participation? How much the labor force, how much population that are in the age of labor and how much they are in the system. So what about your unemployment rate? So using the labor force participation rate, to calculate the unemployment rate. So it's also about the job creation capacity actually. It also, labor force participation is kind of a proxy for job creation capacity. So increasing the labor force participation, if we think this in the formula, increasing in the labor force participation increase the unemployment rate somehow in the formula, in mathematical terms. And in the same time, decreasing labor force participation decreases the unemployment rate. But this is kind of a simple math. We cannot make such an analysis actually in the practice. Why? It's because you need to calculate the gender-based unemployment rate. You need to calculate the age in the labor force. Those are all together actually explains the employment situation in the country. So we do not, we do have to actually carefully while doing our analysis again. It's another reminder. So in those countries, especially North African countries actually have problems with child labor, and most of the countries have problems with women participation, for example, the women participation in the workforce. So in the labor force, you can say workforce or labor force, it doesn't matter. So while we are analyzing those countries, we need to remind this, especially women participation, even in Saudi Arabia. Okay, they are now having 2013 vision policies, but it's not enough, of course. Them they even need actually currently let women to derive in the public actually. So they are making progress, but is enough or not? No, it's not enough. So while we are the point here, while we are analyzing, for example, the labor force or unemployment situation in the countries, you need to focus on such indicators, actually sub-indicators, such sub-indicators in the economy itself. So we can just skip those parts. The main differences, actually, we can maybe mention here. The main differences between MENA countries and other developed countries is the service sector and the technological growth they have. I already explained somehow on the importance of technological innovations, technological developments, and reflecting these developments using the education to those to the society you have, to the especially young population you have using the education system, which are not developed or efficient in those countries. Is another problem of those countries. Especially the private sector-led growth is kind of a key factor to be able to get high technological development, kind of high-tech development. I'm just reminding you again, the second table we have. I would like to mention here again Israel. Just reminded, the Israel was at the same time resource poor and labor poor, but it has the highest income growth in the region. Why? Because of the high-tech development in the country. They easily adapted this high technology into their production style, into their production model. So they actually start to export their high-tech products. So as an example here, actually, to support this case or this theory, one of the papers, actually, empirical papers, found that for each job created in high-tech sector, it's equal to 4.3 jobs created in all professions and income groups, actually. So it's kind of almost 5 times beneficial. I mean, the job created in the high sector development, high-tech sector development creates 5 times beneficial kind of benefits, 5 times benefits to the whole economy in terms of all professions and income groups. So it's really important to adapt the high-tech products, but it does not mean that, for example, think about Turkey, it does not mean that fully focus on the high-tech sector and skip the other sectors like agriculture. As an agriculture country of agriculture like Turkey or even France, France is a kind of, France and Holland is good examples of this, but in Turkey, for example, if we compare to Turkey in terms of this situation, just focusing on high-tech sector mostly and just leaving the agriculture sector undeveloped, it's not the case. It's not feasible economic policy for countries like Turkey. So at the same time, if you are an agricultural country, if you have lands of agriculture, you must give your priority equally to high-tech sector and the agriculture sector. This situation, actually, today's current COVID-19 situation, COVID-19 process, showed us how important the main or fundamental sources of like agriculture for the entire people, actually, entire world. So that's why actually this also having agriculture development also important for any countries. We do have such graphs here, but I think we run out of our time. Remittances, we already explained actually, are important for Egypt, Lebanon, and Morocco, and countries, such countries. Also, services sectors are also important for such countries, especially Lebanon, Tunisia, North African countries, and Egypt. I'm trying to come here, the impacts of COVID-19 actually. I would like to show you some, we already also explained the population. We can skip those parts. I was planning to mention the importance of population of those countries, but I already explained they have high rates of young population. This is somehow advantage and at the same time disadvantage for those countries. It's advantage for as a production function. Human capital is one of the production functions, like capital, like labor force, like technological development, etc. Human capital is one of the most important parts of production. So they have kind of advantage in terms of their young population, but they have also at the same time disadvantage in terms of their young population, because they have to feed this young population both in brain and in throat, actually. You have to feed them by demonstrating, by developing good education system in order to kind of raise them as beneficial to the society, to the economy itself. So these countries, most of those countries in the region, unfortunately, couldn't achieve this goal. How do we see this actually? How can we come up this outcome? We do see main struggles in the, especially the rivalries actually, or the protests in the streets. You do see that the young population are always on the front. So they are, we can easily infer here that they are facing difficulties to manage their young society, their young population. For example, Iraq, in Iran, in Lebanon, the young population are always on the front, they're on the floor. So one of the main problems of those countries are their education systems, are the unemployment rate in the young population. So once they solve those problems, such problems actually, they will be better off. So I'll try to show you. I don't know, do you see this graphs? You can just let me know. I think you do see these graphs, right? So just remind the information that I gave you beforehand, that the projections that are made before COVID-19 already changed. And in these infographics, actually, these infographics are kind of prepared by us, the economic department in the ORSAM. We do actually compare the projections before and after the COVID-19. IMF actually normally run one or maximum two projections in a year, but after COVID-19, they released at least 3 projections. The first projection was on the October 2019. During the October, actually, in terms of their economic growth of those countries, actually, they were actually estimating countries like Iran and Lebanon were facing, as we all know, actually, why the reasons. We already explained some of the reasons behind this. We're expecting low rates of economic growth, but others were expected to be better. Even 2021, it will be better off. They will be better off. But after the COVID-19, actually, the second projection was made in April 2020. They actually, even especially in the 2020, this year actually, they expected the very worse situation of many countries, not just countries like Iran and Lebanon, but all other countries were expected to decrease in their economic growth. So it is the case actually. Right now we are witnessing this situation. Most of the countries, even in the world actually, but since this is our case, the MENA region actually countries tend to face higher rates of lower rates of economic growth. In terms of current account balances, actually, the same situation applies. Before the COVID-19, actually, countries like Algeria and Lebanon were expected to get lower rates of current account balance. But after COVID-19, actually, almost all countries, and plus some new countries like Iraq and Oman, actually, are estimated to have higher shocks. We can say the shocks of actually we can determine this as shocks. They were estimated to face higher shocks than others actually. Iraq, we can explain the interventions of the US and the other ongoing problems in the region, actually in the country. So I think we can stop here. This also info actually showed the same in terms of the entire region comparing to other world countries, or comparing the entire world actually. So we can easily see here the same situation. After COVID-19, these countries are expected to get higher impacts, to get affected mostly than other countries in the world because of their economic structures. In the first place, I remember the information that I gave you in the first place, in the beginning of the class. The low rates of economic diversity comes with high price, high cost in terms of business cycles. What kind of business cycles? Like the shocks they already faced during COVID-19. I have to, the last thing actually I have to add here, these countries actually faced twin shocks during this year, actually, the famous year 2020. The twin shocks were the impacts of COVID-19, and at the same time they faced with the oil prices shocks. So petroleum shock, actually, also you can say petroleum shocks. So these twin shocks comes with really high cost of those countries, even the countries in the GCC. I explained what kind of cost they have, what kind of problems they face. In the first place, they faced with the oil price shocks. They actually faced the unbalanced situation in their budget. The budget deficit were really high because of the decrease in oil prices. At the same time, since those countries have high rates of migrants from countries like Egypt and Lebanon and Tunisia, those countries also face problems with these workers, actually. Since because of the effects of COVID in the services sector, COVID-19 in the services sector, they had to shut down or minimize their working levels in the organizations that are working, or the institutions that are working in these sectors. They have to they kind of prefer to send back many of these workers into their own land, and it affected their countries. At the same time, it affected the countries, the targeted countries that make this export into GCC countries. There were a two-way problematic situation after COVID-19. So let's finish here. If you get any more questions, you can ask now. We can make a question and answer section right now. If I can be able to get your questions, I will try to explain the questions you asked. Let me stop sharing this stuff. I think, oh yeah, chat here. Okay. Yeah, you can get the material I use. I can send you the slides. What is global powers? Global powers, countries like US, UK, EU countries, those are those countries actually. How come that countries that has oil, like Tunisia, for example, import oil from other countries? What can be the political reason? They do not allow most of the time. Also, they do not have enough capacity to do this. But countries like Tunisia also producing some goods. For example, Turkish share of import from Algeria or Tunisia tend to increase. But the simple case of Tunisia, actually, they have some political struggles and trying to solve this with new governance. As far as I follow, they will be better. The new policy, how can we say, policy tool of Turkey in the Northern Africa, with the support of Turkey and other countries in Northern Africa, actually, with the new governments, Tunisia will be better. Will transfer kind of the technology to be able to extract the resources they have. Highly successful when it comes to economic diplomacy. In terms of economic diplomacy, actually the Emirates tend to most successful in terms of economic diplomacy, but in evil way. So we have a kind of long question, but start with the other one. Between the historical era of the 17th and 18th centuries, did the MENA states make any economic contributions globally, and what were these contributions? In these centuries, actually, they were part of Ottoman Empire. Of course, they within an Ottoman Empire, they made their contribution to the global economy, but we should consider the situation, the entire world situation at that time. The countries in the Europe actually made their industrial revolution, and the Ottoman Empire and the East countries in the East actually kind of missed this development because they did not go into much having colonization issue, because the Western powers went through the colonization issue. With the colonization issue, they get more wealth. Remember the era of mercantilism and the rules of mercantilism, kind of cruel rules of mercantilism. They kind of achieved their rapid development during that time, but unfortunately the East, the Ottoman Empire were representing the East that time, couldn't achieve, couldn't catch this development, we can say this. I'm seeing here the hard dilemma, the effects of climate change such as desertification, drought, and depleting water resources pose great risks to the region. Yeah, you're right. On the other hand, many economies of the countries in the region is dependent on the export of fossil fuels, which undeniably causes much of the global warming. Yeah, in somehow. But the global warming from US and China is the highest, of course. Comparing with them, it's nothing. How should the region confront this dilemma and ensure its commitment to the CDGs? As I'm seeing here, a potential trade-offs and opportunity cost. Of course, there is a potential opportunity cost in terms of climate change, but as I said in the first place, actually, not even in the MENA region, in the entire world, the economic rationales are going parallel kind of with the political situations. So believe me, they do not even care about climate change, because even US actually did not sign even the Kyoto Protocol. So they do not even care of this. But in terms of the opportunities they have, yes, in terms of CDGs, the MENA countries can easily differentiate the diversification in the production. They can diversify their sources like renewable resources or alternative resources. Again, so which of these MENA countries, we already explained this. In recent years, Saudi Arabia and several countries, last two questions. In recent years, Saudi Arabia and several countries in the region have tried to diverse of their economic activities. Yeah. What main challenges may be faced by these countries during applying this diversity? This answer is simple. Their governance, their kings or even princes, the MBS, the main struggle or the main problem of those countries' development are their kings, their princes. I'll try to come back in your opinion, is it possible to build, the last question, in your opinion, is it possible to build successful economies when most of them are hydrocarbon economies? Yes, of course, but the successful economies means sustainable economic growth with the human development, along with the human development. So it's equal to political stability and democratization. So let's finish here. I hope you enjoyed today. I hope we just try to, or we achieve the goals we explained in the first place, in the first sentences of the lecture. It's a bit difficult to make online classes. We are trying to get used to live in this new era, but I hope you make it well in your lessons, in your universities and other schools, etc. I hope you make it well and be safe. Thank you. I'm trying to find any question you ask.